Get ready for a war with Iran, all right? Get ready, because overnight, a U.S. warship and other commercial ships, the U.K. ships, Japanese ships, and the United States were attacked with missiles by Iranian-affiliated ships in the Red Sea. So how do we know this? Well, because the Pentagon is telling us this. So we have to believe the Pentagon, right? They always tell the truth. So when the Pentagon speaks, you should pay attention to that. They told the Associated Press, the Pentagon said Sunday, that a U.S. Navy destroyer and several commercial vessels came under attack in the Red Sea. So now just take a look at this map here. That's a very important shipping lane. Of course, one of the most important shipping lanes, one of the busiest shipping lanes in the world. Here's an idea. If you don't need to be there, why are you there? Sandwiched in between Djibouti, Ethiopia, Yemen, Saudi Arabia, Sudan, Egypt, Israel, and Jordan. Why are you putting American lives at risk by showing up in the Red Sea? And then you wonder why, as we're in people's backyard, they don't like us. Get the hell out of there. The reason they don't like us is because we are there. You know, it's like hanging out in someone's backyard and taking a shit on a regular basis. Like, oh, there's that guy again. He's constantly in our backyard going and doing his business. I'm sick of this guy constantly ruining our backyard. Get out of here. And you wonder why they're going to hit you? How do we, the Pentagon said this, and so it must be true. We are aware of reports regarding attacks on the USS Carney and commercial vessels in the Red Sea and provide information as soon as it becomes available, the Pentagon told the AP. Then last night, U.S. Central Command said the USS Carney responded to attacks on 3 commercial vessels, the Unity Explorer, the number 9, and the Sophie 2. CENTCOM said the Carney shot down a total of 3 drones, including 2 that were headed in its direction. U.S. Central Command said the attacks were fully enabled by Iran. Had targeted 3 commercial vessels connected to 14 countries with ballistic missiles or drones. So fully enabled. Iran fully enabled all of this. They're such enablers. So it kind of reminds me of something. On August 4th, 1964, in the Gulf of Tonkin, something interesting happened. The USS Maddox was patrolling the waters in the Gulf of Tonkin when it suddenly came under heavy attack by the North Vietnamese torpedo boats. They were so fast moving, the captain even called in air support because they were appearing out of nowhere. They were coming from all sides. All sides. We need air support to bomb the waters in order to hit these fast-moving North Vietnamese boats. The U.S. press, of course, heard about the incident immediately without really checking at all because they just got it from the Pentagon. The U.S. press snapped right to attention and reported atrocities. America attacked. U.S. planes hit back. 3 red PT boats attacked U.S. ship off North Vietnam. Oh my God, the United States was attacked? Just like at Pearl Harbor, we were attacked again? Unbelievable. So, and Congress fell in line and authorized an attack on North Vietnam then, of course, in response. They called it the Fight If We Must resolution. The Fight If We Must resolution. Oh, I guess, I guess we have to do this.
I don't like that at all, but it is clever PR.
I guess we have to do it. I guess we have to fight, don't we? So, yeah, how can we
because we had I like that it doesn't cover why we were there. That's not important. It's like fight if we must.
Yeah, don't ask that question.
Oh, I hate being dragged into someone else's neighborhood and then have to fight them.
Right. I'm in the Red Sea. Why are you in the Red Sea?
Doesn't matter.
Doesn't matter. Don't ask those questions. You commie for asking those questions. How could we not respond to this tyranny? Patrolling right off their coasts and being attacked, attacking U.S. warships. Those commie bastards, we have to attack them. It's the right thing to do. Remember, at the time, the captain of the ship called in air support. Well, it turned out a few of those pilots later admitted that there were no targets. They were told to drop their bombs basically on empty ocean. Nothing. Phantoms. Why? Well, we now know why, of course. In the early 2000s, the truth finally came out. After a lot of first-person acknowledgement about what was going on there, we finally got the documents from the NSA, the National Security Agency. Of course, this is the same government organization that Edward Snowden exposed years later, showing they were spying on Americans, of course. The NSA documents showed there was no attack, And the teletype messages and the conversations and the internal documents and the orders given by the captain, all of it revealed it was a false flag to rally support to enter Vietnam. That's exactly what happened. So, and I have to admit, I do find it a little heartening this morning, actually, because, I mean, you guys are an amazing audience. You understand this. In fact, before I even started doing this story, so many of you already in the chat, as I started this story, said Gulf of Tonkin, Gulf of Tonkin. Like before I even got to this part of what I was going to talk about. So you're already thinking that, which is great. So I have to admit, I was pretty heartened this morning to notice that I went on Google Trends to see how many people were searching for Gulf of Tonkin this morning. Look at this. Over the past 24 hours, Americans jumped all over Google to learn about the lies that were used to drive us into Vietnam. They're like, this sounds very familiar. This sounds very familiar to what's happening. And even on Twitter, look at this on X, trending in the United States, Gulf of Tonkin, trending. Because people aren't falling for this shit anymore.
Well, I was just talking about this on a live stream the other day. It's like once you see a false flag and all the information and propaganda around it, it makes it so much easier to see it when it happens again. And then it's like the more people that learn that, the more people that start to question it. But it's just funny how like once you see it, you can't unsee it.
Yeah. And there's a long line of it, which we'll get to in a second. So this is like, can you guys come up with a new idea? I mean, they try different variations of it and they plant seeds of truth, right, to kind of throw us off the scent of it. But at the heart of it, this is how they continue to keep us in these forever wars.
But this is something that I have to fight against when what David says, like you almost assume everything that they say is lies. And so you're like, oh, okay, that's probably a lie. But as a journalist, we have to not just assume that everything is true or a lie. That throws me off where I'm like, okay, here's a story. Let me give that the benefit of the doubt. And then I'm usually screaming by the end of the day when
you dive into
dig a little deeper.
Until they prove it, you know what I mean? Like because they don't ever prove anything, so it's like if it's like fool me once, shame on you or me or whatever, or you know.
Yes,
you know,
but I don't want us to get the reputation of just all in conspiracy, and so we're looking for those angles all the time. We have to try to take everything neutrally and then dig for ourselves, and it's really tough.
It's very difficult because when the first piece of news that comes out is already coming from an intelligence news agency like the Associated Press was the first to report this, they are an arm of the U.S. intelligence apparatus, right? It's like basically the CIA put out a news release. That's what the Associated Press is. The New York Times, Washington Post, etc. They are extensions of the U.S. intelligence state. So when that's the first piece that you get, you're like, okay, well, is there a kernel of truth here? Then now we've got to start peeling this onion back to find out the real truth. And it makes it incredibly difficult, of course, because they are fully funded and independent journalists are not, and they're few and far between. Go ahead, Philip.
Well, it's the boy that cried wolf scenario. Like if the U.S. government, like the Pentagon, want us to believe them, they've got to stop getting caught lying so damn often.
Yeah.
It's like the fact that they're caught lying as much as they are, like, of course they don't have any credibility. Like, why would anybody believe them?
Right.
You know, establish a different base of judgment here. Like let us believe you, but how can we?
Yeah.
Yeah, because their track record is so, and they try something big, they pull a 9/11 or something. Americans are waking up that their government is foisting this lie on them. Now, side note here, one of the pilots on that day was told to come help. One of the names of these pilots is James Stockdale. This is the guy on your screen. I became fascinated with Stockdale a number of years ago. You guys may remember, of course. Does his face ring a bell for any of you? I remember this is really when I became fascinated with U.S. history and at a much younger age. But Ross Perot, of course, chose him as his vice presidential candidate back in the day. He then became Vice Admiral Stockdale, but at the time he was just a pilot in Vietnam. He led the attack that day in the air on the USS Ticonderoga. So when they called in air support, there was your guy, Stockdale. And he came to protect the desperate USS Maddox, was under attack by the North Vietnamese. All these torpedo boats were attacking the USS Maddox. So he took to the air with some other pilots, and he had just learned that had taken over 20 torpedo attacks, the USS Maddox did, and they were in desperate need of help. So he bravely took to the air. For more than 90 minutes, he later recounted how he made parallel runs to the ship back and forth at low altitude, below 2,000 feet. Looking for the enemy vessels, he reported later, quote, "I had the best seat in the house to watch that event, and our destroyers were just shooting at phantom targets. There were no PT boats there. There was nothing there but black water and American firepower." His other pilots in that same squadron also reported the exact same thing. Phantom targets, no PT boats, nothing. No North Vietnamese were there. And he noticed right away, by the way, that when he flew over the USS Maddox, it was in perfect condition. Pretty remarkable for a ship that barely survived torpedo attacks. It was under heavy bombardment by over 20 torpedo attacks. So in other words, the North Vietnamese didn't attack the USS Maddox. It was totally fabricated. Question, does the American government then lie to you on a regular basis in order to drag us into wars? If you're still on the fence about it, let me refresh your memory with just a shortened list that I put together.
I want to give you a joke there. Is a frog's behind watertight? That seems like where you're going with that, right?
Yeah, I mean, well, exactly. So here, let me give you the shortened list to see if I can help you here. So let me jog your memory. Spanish-American War, the fake attack on the USS Maine, Pearl Harbor in World War II, got us into World War II, Vietnam, Gulf of Tonkin, which we just recounted here, babies and incubators, Gulf War, with an actress who stood up in front of Congress and cried. Weapons of mass destruction, Second Gulf War. Assad gasses his own people, U.S. attacks Syria. Those are just a few. Feel free to add any more to the list here. Remember, it took the false flag of Gulf of Tonkin to get Congress to give Lyndon Johnson power to attack. We never declared war on Vietnam. Congress gave him the power to escalate the war. It's exactly what the Gulf of Tonkin resolution was. Now, the neocons don't even wait for false flags anymore. Senators weeks ago passed a bill giving Biden war powers to attack Iran. Here's warmonger Lindsey Graham.
Will introduce a resolution in the United States Senate to allow military action by the United States in conjunction with Israel to knock Iran out of the oil business. Iran, if you escalate this war, we're coming for you.
Are you effectively poised to declare war on Iran? That's very strong language.
I am poised to use military force to destroy the source of funding for Hamas and Hezbollah.
Okay.
Everyone in our chat saying, yeah, 9/11, 9/11, 9/11. The USS Cole, thank you. Yes, exactly. U.S.-Mexican War.
Lusitania.
Yugoslavia. Serbia. I didn't forget Serbia.
Right.
Exactly. So early this morning, U.S. Central Command released this statement on the attacks in the Red Sea. These attacks represent a direct threat to international commerce and maritime security. They have jeopardized the lives of international crews representing multiple countries around the world. We also have every reason to believe that these attacks, while launched by the Houthi rebels in Yemen, are fully enabled by Iran. The United States will consider all appropriate responses in full coordination with its international allies and partners. So what are they going to do? Because
you want a war in the Red Sea?
The Houthis can literally attack oil rigs in Saudi Arabian oil rigs and wipe out enormous amounts of European oil and natural gas if they want to. And there's nothing they could do to stop them. So if that's really what they're going to do, they're playing with fire. So you'll see some sort of a response. I've seen some speculate, military experts saying the U.S. and Israel will launch some bombs into some empty hillsides in Yemen and say they struck back and they won't hit anything. But if they really wanted to hit actual Houthi targets, they are in for a world of hurt. If they unleash that, because they will fire back and destroy a massive amount of infrastructure, and we will be fully engaged, if that's what they want. So we'll see exactly what the U.S. and Israeli response. If they really want to be pulled into this, expect some sort of a big retaliation towards Iran over the next 24, 48 hours. Or more of these attacks will continue until it just builds up to a boiling point. So we'll keep our eye on these false flags.
Do you mean attacks or attacks?
Yeah, attacks or attacks.
Okay.
Let us know in the chat what you guys think is going on here. But this is, by the way, I mean, Secretary of Defense Lloyd Austin came out and made a surprising statement yesterday, excuse me, where he basically said, we're calling on Israel, you got to stop the civilian deaths, or you're making a strategic blunder, a strategic mistake, meaning For every civilian you kill, you're creating basically 5 more Hamas. You're
Yes.
going to create an anger and resentment that will last. It'll be a defeat for Israel. And Senator Lindsey Graham came out just a few minutes later and said he's naive and I've lost all faith in Lloyd Austin and he's a failure and he's not credible at all anymore. So we'll see what happens here. Excuse me. Who's going to win this little battle? Neocons or Lloyd Austin? Is Lloyd Austin about to be canned because of making those statements? And is the neocons,
Right.
are they going to win? It's going to be interesting to see what happens there. Go ahead, Philip.
Yeah, like when Lindsey Graham is saying that, is insulting you, you're really down there.
Right.
Yeah. Lindsey Graham, he reminds me of like a high schooler who felt really good making some points in debate club and then just keeps going because it feels good
With
to
the
like,
same 3 points that he
to
makes?
feed his ego. He's like, you could tell he really was empowered by making that threat to Iran as if Iran was actually listening to Meet the Press.
Yeah.
He was like, Iran, if you try this, like, oh, that felt so good.
I mean, he goes wherever the
say
wind blows him.
Yeah.
Literally. Thank you so much for watching this segment here at Redacted. We are live every day at 4 p.m. Eastern Time, trying to share the stories that the mainstream media will not cover. You should also come over and join our community of Redacted Rebels over at redacted.inc. That's our private locals community where we can share exclusive content that we simply cannot share here on YouTube. Come over and join the rebellion together right now by going to redacted.inc. We'll see you next time.